So next up, we'll hear from Sitar Teli, a VC at Connect Ventures, with over 7 years of experience. Her portfolio company includes companies like SoundCloud, CityMapper, and Space Ape Games. Please welcome on stage Sitar Teli.
Hello. As mentioned, my name is Sitar Teli, and I'm a venture capitalist based in the UK. I've been a VC for 7 years. I focus primarily, can you guys hear me okay? Okay, focus primarily on early stage mobile and internet companies. So it's been a long day here. We've had some really fantastic speakers, but that's only half of what happens at an event like this. The other half happens off the stage. It happens back there, it happens in the other rooms, it happens in the evening, and that event is networking. Now, networking is a really important part of an event like this, whether it's VCs meeting entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs meeting journalists, VCs meeting each other. Networking is pretty fundamental. So I have a confession to make. I hate networking. I really hate it, and I actually don't know many people that really enjoy it. There's a lot of different reasons why I don't like it. I am naturally an introvert, so I prefer smaller conversations, one-on-one conversations. I prefer longer, in-depth talks versus shorter ones. I don't like pitching myself, but actually, those are all excuses. The real reason I don't like networking is because I suck at it. And I think there's a lot of people that are in that same bucket. It's something you have to do. It's not something you look forward to doing. And it's something you probably find painful. But it doesn't have to be painful. Now, as a VC, a lot of my job involves networking. So over the past 7 years, I've had to get good at it. And so there's some tips I have for how to get better at networking. They may seem quite basic, but you'll be amazed at how often people forget about these tips and make some mistakes, including me. So, starting with the absolute basics, remember to tell people your name. That may seem too obvious, but you'll be amazed at the number of times people come up to one another and say, "Hey, really good talk on stage. I'd love to tell you about my startup." And about 2-3 minutes in, you realize you still don't know who the person is that you're talking to. Now, you may have the most exciting startup in the world. You may be building a hoverboard, which if you are, just contact me later. But even if you are, I'm as interested in who you are as in what you're building. And I think that's true for most people. So whether you're pitching a journalist about writing about your company, they probably want to know about you as much as they want to know about your company. People are far more interested in helping other people than they are in helping products or ideas. So always remember to put yourself first. Another point about the name is, if you meet someone and then you see them again in a few weeks or a few months, don't be upset if they don't remember your name, and don't remind them that you've met before and they don't remember your name. It just makes them feel bad. You meet a lot of people, and it's hard to remember everyone you meet, but making that person feel bad about not remembering is really, really getting off on the wrong foot. Do your homework. So before you come to an event like this, there's a lot of publicly available information about who's coming and their background. So when you go up to speak to someone, if you know there's people you want to speak to and you go up and you speak to them, you should have a good idea in your head of why what they do and why what you're doing is interesting to them. So why should they care about what you're doing? I was in Romania a couple of weeks ago at a conference, and someone came up to me and they said, "I hear you've started a new venture capital firm in the UK. I have a startup. I want to know if you're the right VC for my startup. Can you tell me a little bit about your fund?" It was definitely a different approach. It's not an approach I would recommend. That's kind of like calling someone up on the phone and then asking them why you're on the phone together. It's just not a good way to start. Pre-network. So again, there's lots of information available about who's coming to these events. And it's really, really easy to get people's contact information. So if there's someone you specifically want to talk to, email them beforehand about who you are, why you'd like to meet, and propose specific dates and times. That way you've kind of taken out the cold approach and you've got a warm intro. Speaking of intros, try to get an intro, right? Everyone here is on LinkedIn. Everyone suffers through that really horrible user interface for a reason. We sit there and we accept invitation after invitation to connect, building out our network. Use that network to your advantage. You may not like the fact that people rely on social proof and filters to decide who they're going to talk to, and it may depress you, but that's no reason not to use it to your advantage. So always try to get a warm intro if you can. Timing. Let's say you want to speak to someone who's going to be on stage, or someone who's presenting on one of the other stages. The worst time to approach them is right when they're getting off stage. They generally get mobbed by people who are interested in talking to them. And that's probably the point at which they'll have the least amount of time for you. So try to approach them when they're not about to get on stage, they're not about to get off stage, they're not clearly headed from point A to point B. Try to approach them when they're kind of just sitting around, maybe sitting in the audience, pretending to listen, like some of you guys are. Try to find them when they're not clearly busy doing something else. Context. So if you're, say, at one of the booths back there, it makes perfect sense to pitch your company. If it's 2 hours from now and it's a party and everyone has a beer in their hand, pitching is pretty much the worst thing you can do. It's the end of the day. As interesting as your hoverboard company may be, people really aren't interested in hearing about it at that point. And it's actually a missed opportunity, because when you're at a party, it's a great opportunity to get to know people at a different level. So you don't talk about work. Talk about art, talk about music, talk about the things that interest you. It gives you a chance to know the person you're talking to at a deeper level, to get to know if you really do want to work with the person, or if you really want this person to help you out in some way. And it gives them a chance to be more interested in you beyond just the really basics of your company. And also gives you a chance to say that you're a well-rounded person, you're intelligent and interested in things beyond just hoverboards. Info. Always get the information for the person you're talking to. So get a business card. And if you don't get a business card, add them on LinkedIn or give them your business card and ask them for a follow-up. And at the very least, after you talk to anyone, make notes about what you talked about. That way, when you follow up afterwards, as you should do, out of the 50 or 100 people you met, you can actually write very clear, pointed emails that reference what you talked about and what you'd like to do with the person next. Without that, it's really a, hey, it was great to meet at Slush, look forward to meeting in the future. That's like an auto-delete email. No one cares about that email. Okay, don't be creepy. This is far more prevalent than you'd think. So the number of times you go to a networking event and you see two people immersed in a conversation, and there's that third person in the background just standing around waiting for the conversation to end, not really doing anything except waiting for the conversation to end, that's creepy. Don't do that. It puts too much pressure on the people that are talking to finish their conversation. It makes you a lurking person. Nobody wants to be that person, and nobody wants to talk to that person. It can be hard if you're at a networking event on your own. Ideally, you should go networking in pairs. That way, if the person you want to talk to is busy, you can speak to your pair and talk to them, and then while you're having the conversation, you have a natural outlet, again, with the person that you came with. So try to network in pairs. Finally, a couple of philosophical points. Be resilient. It's really hard in an event like this. There's 3,000 people. There's a lot of people who want to talk to certain people, and you're going to have trouble getting their time. Be persistent, be resilient. Don't worry if the person initially says no. Just be confident and you'll get to them later. And then finally, be open. So don't just focus on the high-value names and the people you read about on TechCrunch and on Arctic Startup or whatever. Think about people. There are people out there who can help you in ways you haven't even thought of yet. But you first have to be open to the possibility that there are people you haven't heard of, that you've never heard of, and you may never read about, but they can be really helpful. So be open and talk to. Err on the side of openness and maybe having a bad conversation in the interest of potentially having a good one, versus just for focusing on the Mike Butchers and Esther Dysons of the world. And if you want some more resources, I'll put this up on SlideShare, but here's some a really good blog posts about networking tips. They're kind of focused on conferences and how to approach people, but some of them also talk about how to approach journalists and just generally how to talk to people that you really like to talk to. Thank you.